let me just spend 30 seconds here. UAT is nothing but a phase where we give a finished product to a customer and they test it in their environment with their users and they report uh, you know if they find any bug, if they are not happy with some of the features. So all these things, if they see that something has not been developed as per the agreement, so that is the phase where they test and they report that.
Okay, so let me brief with this UAT phase. So generally, this phase will come after your unit testing and simple integration testing. So in development life cycle, we will have first unit testing that will be done by developer. Then second will come SIT. In most of the organization, that will be done by testing team. In few organization, as a developer, you also need to do. Okay, but it depends on company uh, decision and infrastructure and many things are there that take decision who will do SIT. But most of the company, there will be separate testing team and they will do this SIT testing. Then UAT testing will come. So in UAT testing, user will, like, from where you will get requirement that user will do testing of your functionality, everything as per their expectation or not. So user will be involved in that UAT testing phase and they will validate everything as per their requirement. If there will be anything, then you need to fix that one. So that UAT will come in picture. And after that, it will go for this performance testing, security testing, other testing will come. And then all testing will be done. Your code will be ready to move on production. So might be you have heard about environment. So environment will also be like dev, SIT, UAT, pre-prod and prod. So once you will complete your development, you will do all the unit testing on dev environment. Once it will be done, that code will be moved to SIT, where like testing team will do integration testing, like what all like API or interface will be interconnected with each other. They will do end-to-end testing, and then once it will be done, your code will move on UAT environment, and then user will do testing there. And once that UAT will be done, then your code will move to pre-prod, and there generally like testing team will do performance testing, security testing, other kind of testing will happen. And once everything will be done, then based on your release date, your code will move to production environment. I hope, Dhana, you are clear with your query.
Yes, Ravi.
Yeah. So next question, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, again, next question. I think it is Ravi for you to explain, because obviously MuleSoft roles, responsibilities, and interview from interview perspective. We can have a separate session where we educate on how to clear interviews, what are the different questions that is expected, what are the different roles and opportunities that is present in the market. I think we can because if we cover this in just 15-20 minutes, we won't be doing justice to the topic. This needs at least 1 or 2 hours in detail, so that people grasp it, because this is the most important thing, clearing interviews and getting a job. So that's why we can't cover in this session, but yes, we will definitely plan to cover something
Yeah.
other.
So Venkatesh, for now, actually, I will give you one video, YouTube video link. You can go through that YouTube video. You will get like a good understanding of what query you have asked. And for more detail, like, yeah, we will arrange some other separate session, or you can connect personally after session. So for now, I will give you one YouTube link. You can refer that one.
Okay, uh, fine. Let's get moving. Uh, okay, so the next piece that I plan to cover here. By the way, I think everyone is back, right? We have close to 57 participants. So okay, so the next piece, what I intended to cover is some thoughts on agile, because agile is a buzzword that is going on around now. Everyone talks about agile. One who understands agile or one who doesn't understand agile, but people will talk on agile, and in every interview they will ask questions on agile. If you just tell that you have a significant amount of knowledge in agile, they won't dig deep into that. So what is agile? Okay, Agile is a concept. Agile is not a approach. Agile is not a framework. Agile is a concept. Agile is a theory. Okay, Agile is a concept that enables anybody to respond to the changes quickly and efficiently. So let me draw back to waterfall approach. In waterfall approach, we what we usually do, we'll have a requirement gathering session first, where we will take requirements and we will freeze the requirements and take a sign off from the customer. Then we will have design phase, where we will design the system based on the requirement, and we'll take sign off and we will close that design phase. Then we will move to other next phase of implementation phase. Okay, if you see, the last phase in waterfall is is done and dusted. I mean, that is over. Ravi, just a small question here. Have you started the recording? If you have stopped.
Yes, yes, I already started.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the last phase in every waterfall implementation is done and dusted, and we can't move back. We have to move, keep moving to the next phase. So once we are in the implementation phase, we can't go back to design phase and change the design if we have any new requirements. So some of the organization saw it as a biggest challenge, because most of the times what will happen, the organization will have some kind of product in their mind, but they are not really clear of what will come there. In those cases, what happened is like that it was very difficult to accommodate the changes. So that's where then where this agile philosophy came. So they in a very layman language, if you have to understand, they segregated those implementation phase into series of small implementation phase, and they call that as a sprint. Like implementation phase of 3 months or so, where we will design the software, we will build it, we will test it, and so on and so forth. So we divided it into shorter implementation phase of 2 weeks or so, and we call them a sprint. And if we have any changes in a particular sprint, that can be taken in the next sprint. That was one of the purpose of changing to agile, so that we can accommodate the changes for a product where customer is not very sure what the finished product should look like, and they want to see a product, then decide if we are going the right way or not. This concept was born. Okay, essentially, there are four pillars or core principles of agile. They are actually in Agile Manifesto, that is a document the Agile creator has created. There are totally 12 principles, but four of them are the core principles or the topmost principles that I have mentioned here. So the first one is highest priority is to satisfy the customer. So through early and continuous delivery of the valuable software. So that's what I mentioned some minutes back. It's like when the customer themselves are not able to visualize the end product, then ideally what they would expect is like give me some part of the product, let me see it, and let me tell you whether this is looking good or not. If this is looking good, we will build incrementally to this, and we'll get the finished product. So for to cater to those mindset of the customer, we follow agile process. That is one thing. Then welcoming changing requirements, that we already talked. Delivering working software frequently. So at the end of every sprint, we will ship some kind of finished product, and at the end of last sprint, we will have a full blown product ready. That is the idea of agile, and a strong collaboration. So here in this agile approach, the customer is a very much integrated with the development team. I mean, what I mean to tell is like there is a very strong collaboration between all the development team, product owners, other roles like Scrum Master, and the customer also, because at the end of every sprint they will be invited for a demonstration, and they will get a chance to look into the software that has been produced, and they will give their feedback. So this was missing in waterfall. In waterfall, was what used to happen once the product is ready for use. At the end of waterfall implementation cycle, after all tests and everything has been passed, in the UAT phase only we used to see the product. Okay, and if they think that the product is not as per the expectation, they thought of something else, but this is something else, then it was already very late to accommodate any change. So that's where Agile is born. Now, to cater to this agile concept, okay, I if you remember, I told agile is a concept, agile is a frame, agile is not a framework. Okay, so we have there are a lot of frameworks in the market who is built as per the agile methodology, okay, as per the agile concept or agile philosophy. Okay, so some of the frameworks that is widely used is Scrum, Kanban, Extreme Programming, Crystal, Dynamic System Development Method. Okay, so these are the top 4 5 that I could gather from in terms of agile methodology. Out of this, in 80% of the case, it would be 80 85%, or I would say 90% of the case, it would be Scrum. Okay, so in most of the places, if someone is talking about agile, you can safely assume that they are talking about Scrum. So agile and Scrum in corporate parlance is used interchangeably. Okay, so Scrum is a framework that is based on agile philosophy. So that is the key takeaway of this slide. Moving on, we have let's talk about some of the benefits and disadvantages of agile. So benefits we already discussed. We can accommodate new requirements. uh, we can demonstrate finished product and take their feedback after end of every sprint. Okay, so don't worry about the sprint and the terminology that I am using. I have covered everything in detail, and you will be at the end of this section, you will be having a fair idea of all these terminologies and events. So for now, you understand as much as you can. Sprint is time box event where we implement our software. So good deployment, focus on collaboration, and of course, because of these all these things, it's a simple and effective process for the organization where we have a changing needs, where the end product is not visualized at the start. Okay. Now, what is the downside? So if you remember when I was explaining the discovery and design session, there were a lot of documents that I mentioned, like in waterfall. We need documents like project plan, technical plan, risk and mitigation, fit gap analysis, uh, uh, the environment that Ravi mentioned a while ago, test environment, UAT environment, production environment. So all those refresh strategy, then test strategy, functional document, low level design document, high level design document. Then what else? Then landscape document, enterprise architecture. So there were a lot of documentation that goes in waterfall. Okay, again, I won't tell that is necessary, that is not necessary. That depends on organization how to perceive those documents. But somewhere people felt that those documents in extensive manner is not required. So the philosophy is agile to create only those documents that is explicitly needed. Like if functional design document is not needed, then we are not going to create a functional design. If the requirement or user story is clear enough, we are not going to create any low level or high level design. So that's where low focus on documentation is mentioned. Again, it's not actually a downside. It might be depending on case to case basis, it might be necessary, it might not be necessary. It's how we perceive. Okay, so this is some of the benefits and downside of agile. So as I mentioned, Scrum is most widely used agile methodology. Uh, One of the things that you would understand from everybody, that you would listen everywhere, so Scrum is incremental and iterative. So what is that? So let's understand incremental philosophy and iterative philosophy uh, uh, for some time. So I have tried to gather a picture of Mona Lisa just to let you know how an incremental process will look like. So if you see incremental Mona Lisa, so this is the customer who is visualizing as a final product as this picture. Okay. So the incremental philosophy tells, and let us assume this 1, 2, 3 is sprint. Okay. Incremental philosophy tells in one sprint, we will put a part of this. We will see whether the finished product is as per our expectation or not, and we will keep on incrementing on that. So if you see in the second sprint, we have uh, created a picture of the second half. In the third, we have completed the picture. So that's how our incremental philosophy goes. Now, what is iterative? Okay, so in iterative, if you see a customer, they have not visualized how a finished product of Mona Lisa will look like. They are just visualizing a woman in professional seating arrangement. Okay, so they are visualizing the product should look something like this, but they are not able to exactly visualize. In those cases, what happens? We will start with a rough sketch, okay, and we will iterate on that. In the second pass, we'll put some colors. In the third pass, we'll create a exact picture, and that's how. If you are not happy with the first passes itself, we will drop the idea there itself. So that's where the agile philosophy of incremental and iterative, um, comes into picture. So essentially, iterating means building a rough version first, and then slowly building to this quality. So in essence, agile follows iterative incremental model. These are theoretical aspects. Obviously, if you know well and good. Uh, if you have any doubt, I mean, I think we can take it after the session. And this is not that difficult. I think everyone else would be able to at least map something out of here. So incremental, incremental, if you see a customer again thinks that there is woman in some professional sitting arrangement, and that's how we will put a rough sketch, and we will take one part, and we will keep on moving from there. So essentially agile is based on incremental and iterative approach. And uh, and yeah, so once we have understanding of incremental and iterative, let's quickly talk about what are the roles in Scrum. So if you see, as per the Scrum guideline, okay, as per the manifesto, they tell there are only three roles in a Scrum. So this is in theory. This is what everyone will tell you. This is what you will get wherever you search. So there is a product owner, there is a Scrum master, and there is a development team. So when they call development team, it is a mix of development as well as QA team. Then we might have other supporting roles also, like they might have architect, there might be a user experience professional, there might be data professional, and all, and so on and so forth. Okay, so uh, in theory we have only these three roles, but actually what happens in corporate, there are overarching roles also. Like most of the time, if we don't have product owner, there would be a business analyst who would be playing a PO and a business analyst role. Sorry, if you don't have a Scrum Master, then someone from the team would be playing the role of Scrum Master. So I have seen projects where Scrum Master is not a separately staffed role. So there will be a development team, and on a round robin basis, someone from the team would play a Scrum Master role for the next sprint. So those things also happen. Or maybe we have staffed some project manager who would be a PM as well as Scrum Master. Remember, I told you there is no one agile approach that is followed by every organization. They customize it as per their needs and whatever best suits them. So we still can see many roles that is not mentioned in the agile manifesto, like architects, and then PMs, then business analyst, and so on and so forth. But yeah, prima facie we have these three roles. Now, what is the team size? So agile philosophy tells if you have a team of 300 people, that is not agile team. Why? Because obviously the collaboration won't be that great, and the development won't be that agile. So what they tell? So for small projects, typical agile team size would be of four, where they tell one developer, one QA, one Scrum Master, and one product owner. Okay, And for a large project with the one we talked some time back, like for large transformation project and so on and so forth, we have 7 to 9 people who is a part of the team. So that is typically I have also seen, and that is what mentioned in the Agile manifesto also. Let's quickly touch upon the product owner. Product owner responsible to create and define product backlog. What is product backlog? We'll see in the next slide. Essentially, at this point of time, we can assume a product backlog as a container that contains, or as a master checklist, master container that contains all the requirements that needs to be worked upon throughout the project implementation. Okay. Then product owner is required to prioritize the requirements in the product backlog. Uh, then in backlog grooming, they need to reprioritize during the sprint if someone is some requirement is not at that priority. Then they need to review the sprint deliverable, the finished product before it is shown to the customer, and they need to accept or reject that. Mostly, what I have seen is product owner might be a role from the customer side. I mean, what will happen is like when we are SI partners or vendor, we will tell there will be a development team that we will give, and there will be a scrum master or project manager or business analyst from our side. So product owner can be a customer staff role. One thing we need to understand whenever we talk about any implementation, it is not like if a company outsource their job to any other vendor, they won't get themselves involved. There will be a team that would be sitting at their end also, who would be closely working with the team at the vendor. So there might be a scenario when product owner is from their side. Mostly I've seen the product owner is from their side, because obviously the product owner needs to understand the landscape better. Product owner needs to understand whether the products or the feature that has been implemented is good enough. So there might be a case where we have PO from their side. Then Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is a role which is just a facilitator. So by facilitator, I mean that he will look after all the he will look after if everything is going well in the sprint. If someone has any issue, then he will try to solve that issue, and he will try to lead all the meetings. Connect with everyone and just check that everyone is progressing as per expectation. Okay. Then we have development team. As I mentioned, development team can have a lot of roles in them, like quality assurance or UI architecture or data team and so on and so forth. Essentially, they are the one who is required to do the implementation. Okay. Now moving on. So remember when we are talking on this slide, I'll just show you that when we're talking here, so there was a section where I told that company A will formulate finalize a requirement. Okay, then this requirement, if you see, will come for agile implementation. Okay, either via this route or that will come by this route. Okay, and here also a requirement finalization happens. Okay, so you will be able to map here. So when the requirement is finalized, for all the requirements is then you know uh, we create a first pass of the sub requirement, and that first breakdown in agile parlance is known as epic. Okay, so epics are created from the requirements. Okay, so that is a very high level high level feature that needs to be implemented. Let's say I have a requirement of getting a customer service support system up and running. Then creating a chat would be a epic. Okay, creating a telephonic integration would be an epic. Then so on and so forth. I mean, all the bigger level of a requirement breakdown is known as epic. Then epic can be sub classified into features. So there might be several features that can come under epic. Then features can be further broken down into stories. Okay, and stories can be further broken down into tasks, and developer or tester or the development team that we were talking in agile would work on the would take task and start working on that. Now again, this is very customizable. I mean, this epic feature story task is very customizable. I have seen organizations that don't use feature as such. They will just create epic. From epic they will create a story and task and will start working. I have seen organization where task is not created. They will just create epic, then feature, then story, and the story is simplified enough so that developers, when I call developer, just assume that developer team is involved. I mean, developer QA and all those roles. So developers can work on the story and get it finished. Okay, sometimes I have seen nothing is there. I mean, no features, no task, but epic and one breakdown of story is there. Okay, so it all depends on organization to organization how they want to run this. But essentially, epic is created for sure, and the story is created for sure. Okay, now let's talk about sprint terminologies. Okay, so uh, let's talk about this. I have been telling user story. I have been telling epic backlog. So let's touch upon this quickly. What is a user story? So from the last diagram, we understand user story is a simplified version of requirements. Maybe first simplified version, second simplified version, or third simplified version. So user story means the simplified background of features to be developed, and developers will pick those user story and develop those user story one by one. And once all the user story is finished, then the sprint gets closed. What is epic? Epic is collection of user story. Okay, you can call epic as a collection of user story, or epic is a breakdown of high level breakdown of requirement. So both things are correct. What is backlog? So backlog, backlog, sprint backlog, and story point we will be covering. I have a very good diagram afterwards where everything will be clear. But for now, let me just cover it quickly. Whenever requirement is broken down into story, okay, that story should be kept somewhere so that we have I will be explaining in a layman terms. So should be kept somewhere so that we can have a proper track of how many stories has been implemented, how many stories remaining. So that container is known as backlog. Okay, where we have collection of all the epic user story bugs and all the work that needs to be completed before we call the project is complete. Okay, so if all the requirements if all the storage of that backlog is complete, then we can call the project is complete. Okay, then sprint. So sprint, as I mentioned, it is a it is a mini. If we compare with a waterfall, it is a set of mini implementation cycle. Okay, that is time boxed, and where we take some of the stories from this backlog and we deliver that. Okay, so time box duration in which a pre-agreed set of user story needs to be developed. The duration of sprint remains throughout the life cycle. So one of the biggest thing that we want to understand here is, if we agreed that the sprint duration will be 2 weeks, then it will be 2 weeks throughout the project implementation. It can't be like we can change the sprint. We have much work, let's do it for 3 weeks. For this sprint we have less work, let's do it for 1 week. So these things are not possible. You need to plan your activities such that it is accommodated within the sprint, and the sprint duration will always be same. So sprint is a time in the agile implementation where we actually implement and test the solution. Okay, so that is the sprint. Backlog we understood, a collection of uh, all the apex user story that needs to be implemented in the project. Now what is sprint backlog? So what we usually do, since this epic since this backlog will be a very large item, we will uh, you know select some of the stories from this backlog and we will work on that. Okay, so here you should see pre-agreed set of user story. So all this pre-agreed set of user stories is moved to the sprint backlog, and we start working on that. Okay, so again, a sprint backlog is like visualize it is a container, it is a subset of product backlog, okay, which will contain the qualified story, I mean the story from here, and we will deliver that. Okay, now the next question is how we are going to pick and choose the stories from the backlog. Let's say backlog has 10 stories or 20 stories. How we are going to choose what are the those three stories or four stories that we will be implementing in the sprint. Okay, so first thing would be prioritizing this backlog. So out of those 20 stories, a BA or a product owner, what they will do, first of all, they will put that they will prioritize that backlog so that most important user stories are present at the top of the backlog. So backlog essentially will have a list of 20 stories where the uh, topmost stories would be a prioritized one. Okay, so that's one thing. Now once we have that prioritized list ready, we will give some estimation to all those stories. Okay, maybe we need we usually follow a Fibonacci series, but again for the sake of simplicity, you understand, we provide some story point there for two story point, two three story point, and so on and so forth. And story point is directly connected to complexity. So for more complex story, we give a higher point, let's say 10. For less complex story, we give a lower point, let's say 3. Okay, so likewise, we will have a backlog where all the stories will have some story point, okay, complexity, and those complexity will be translated to number of hours. So one story point might be 1 hour, or one story point might be translating to 4 hours or 8 hours. Again, this depends on organization to organization. Okay, so I understand this is little confusing because I will have to put everything in Excel, then have to show you a simple calculation and all that will be more clear to everyone. But in the interest of time, just understand that while taking stories from backlog to sprint, story point is the technique that we use to qualify the stories that will come from backlog to sprint backlog. Okay, and how we do that? We do by estimating the story with this story point technique. Okay, now burn down chart. Burn down chart is again there are two kinds of burn down chart. One is product burn down chart. One is sprint burn down chart. It will just tell how much work has been done against how much work is pending. This is a declining graph. It will tell we are at this point of time. These many stories has been completed, and these many stories are are remaining. It is probably a deliverable for a Scrum Master to or business analyst to consume and see whether we are progressing as pre-agreed rate or not. Okay. Then let's talk about the definition of ready and definition of done. Definition of ready is actually a checklist. So this is a sample checklist I have just mentioned here. Obviously, it is from one of the sites that has covered it in a detail. So definition of ready will tell when a story is ready to be developed. So here we discussed, right, from epic we would be selecting the story and putting it in the sprint backlog, and we will start working on that. Okay, so the story should meet all these criteria before that, before we start implementing that. So what are the criteria? The criteria, the story should be clear, testable, feasible, defined, acceptance criteria for the story should be defined, so on and so forth. Okay. So if ends set by your organization, okay, is not defined, then that story is not ready to be developed. Okay, and probably we will have to revisit with the concerned people to get that. Let's say for a story we have a story or requirement that is defined, but we don't have an acceptance criteria written for that. So what is the criteria to accept that? Someone tells that I just want a login screen, okay, but there is no acceptance criteria where the login screen should be, then how many buttons you want submit button or not. So those things should be clearly defined. Then definition of done. Definition of done will tell whether the finished stories as per the development team is actually done or not. And the definition for that done is like these the story these are the obviously these are also a checklist. Okay, so that story should cover all this checklist that is present here. Again, this can be customized by your organization. There is no hard and fast rule, but again, some of the items that is present here, the code should be complete. Code should be well written, commented, and with the best practices, given by the Mulesoft or Salesforce or any other technology that you are using. Okay, the code should be peer reviewed. The unit testing should have been done. UT should have passed. So if a story has passed all these things, then only we will consider that story as done. If anything from this checklist is remaining, then that story is not done. So this is a couple of items that is there in when we talk about ready and done. Now agile ceremonies. Okay, so what is agile ceremony for any agile implementation? Okay, for any Scrum implementation, okay, there are a set of events that usually happens. Okay, so all those events are known as ceremonies. All the things that I have been discussing from this slide to this slide, a direct question. I mean, they will simply ask you how many agile ceremonies have you been a part of in your organization. Actually, I also take interviews for agile in my organization, and my first question would be like, let me know how many ceremonies you were a part of. So if the candidate just mentions one or two ceremonies, I just understand that he has not explicitly worked in agile. Okay, so agile ceremonies, or maybe definite what is the meaning or definition of done, or maybe some questions like what is the difference between a sprint backlog and product backlog, why do we use a burn down chart, who uses burn down chart. So all these things that I have mentioned is directly asked in the interview, and I have been asking all these things. So these things are of very of paramount importance if you want to learn agile. Okay. Now moving on to agile ceremonies. Agile ceremonies means as I explained, the events that take place. The first agile event that happens at the start of every sprint is sprint planning meeting. It is a time box meeting. Some organization follow it as a 4 hour meeting. Some organization give a full day for sprint planning. Some does it in 2 hours. Again, it depends on organization to organization, and how much planning is needed. But if you remember, I told here when we take a story from a backlog and put it into a sprint backlog, we estimate those stories and find out what stories will come here. So that activity is done in the sprint planning meeting. So what we do here to estimate and plan the stories that can be taken up in the sprint is normally done here. Product owner, scrum master, developer team, everyone is a part of meeting, and they just get into an agreement that okay, these are the stories that we can develop and that we can uh, show to the customer in the sprint. Then we have a second agile ceremony that is known as daily scrum meeting. Okay, so daily scrum meeting is a time box 15 minutes meeting to discuss only three things. One is what we have finished working upon last day, what we are going to work today, and if we have any impediments or any roadblock. Okay, and this is actually true. We are not going to, it is never a 1 hour meeting, and we are not going to discuss any issue in detail. We don't discuss issue and get the solution there. And the scrum master will tell, okay, if you have any issue, just connect to that person, or if you have any he will assign a point of contact. So this is a very limited status check meeting where people will tell where are they, if they are stuck, what they are working upon. Okay. Looks like it looks like it should be at the start of every day, but again, this also depends on organization. I have been a part of DSM when it was scheduled at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, because obviously we have sometimes we are working on on-site counterparts and so on and so forth. Okay. Then backlog grooming or health check. So during the sprint, what will happen? We might have taken three user stories that needs to be developed during the sprint, but due to some unforeseen condition or dependency on some other team, we are sure that one of the user story can't be delivered. Let's say um, we are not getting let's say one connector, okay, and we are not required to build that. It was a responsibility of some other team, but that team suddenly went on leave or something happened or someone for some unforeseen condition. We are not able to utilize that connector in our Mulesoft project. Okay. So in those cases, what will happen? We will report this to the business analyst or product owner, whoever is presiding, and we will do a health check and we will reprioritize the sprint. We will groom the backlog, and we will identify, okay, this story will be spillover and can be taken in the next sprint. Okay. The next important ceremony is a sprint review. In a sprint review, what we do, we demonstrate the story or feature of the sprint to the customer and we seek their feedback. And in some of the cases, there is a concept of pilot also, where customer actually goes and works on the finished system and gives feedback. Most of the times it is not there. Most of the times what happens, someone from our side, maybe some architect or BA or product owner will give a demo what has been done in this sprint and see the customer feedback. But in very rare case, even customer can ask for the access and they can they can see the product themselves and give the feedback. So both the things are possible. After the sprint review usually happens at the end of every sprint. After the sprint review, we have a sprint retrospective, okay, where we talk about during the sprint what went well, what didn't go well, what was lagging from our side, where we can improve, and so on and so forth. Again, retrospective is dependent on organizations. Some organization keep that, some organization doesn't keep that. So mostly people will keep, because obviously everyone needs to understand what are the areas where we can improve and so on and so forth. Okay, everyone, most everyone is a part of this. Let me just pause for 30 seconds.
Okay, meanwhile, I want to convey one message. I seen like many people are trying to
Yeah.
join and someone is declining their request. So please don't do that. If anyone trying to join, I'm accepting them. You don't do anything. Other people are, I think, for few people, like someone is declining their request. So
Please don't decline. This session is important for everyone us to learn and grow and earn our name in the corporates.
Yep, even I referred almost some 40 candidates. Still they are not able to join.
yeah,
They
yeah,
texted
actually,
me
I
again.
seen just now. I observed like many people are sending request. I accepted many, but for few request, I seen someone decline their request. So
Yeah,
please,
yeah. Again, they are texting to me.
yeah, please don't do
Mm,
this. If someone is doing, then we will not allow that this kind of participants. Since here we
okay,
are
we have
trying.
64. Yeah, please don't do that. Please,
Yeah, yeah.
everyone
Ask
should get
them to
benefit.
rejoin. I
Yeah.
will. I will accept. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, nonetheless, the script will be sorry, the session will be recorded and it will be shared. So no worries. But again, there is a uh, you know, different feel that comes all together when we have a live session. We can ask, we can interact with the instructor. So all those things will happen. Anyway, going forward, this is the diagram what I was talking about. That will uh, clear all the doubts that you might have. So these are the stakeholders. I told you, na, these are the stakeholder business sponsors. If you remember in the diagram where I showed you how a project is born, there I mentioned some business sponsor. So business sponsor is the person who has the money in his pocket and who is ready to spend. Okay. So business sponsors, stakeholders, and everyone will give requirement. And normally one product owner will be gathering those requirements and creating stories out of that. Again, this product owner is not a fixed role. In many organizations, I have seen business analysts playing a product owner role who will interact with this stakeholders, and they will gather requirement. Sorry. So so again, that business analyst framework of how you gather requirement is is a topic in itself. There are a lot of things that you need to consider. There are a lot of documents that will come into consideration. So we should for the sake of knowing, just understand there is a product owner or business analyst that will be involved here. Now what I told at that point of time, think product backlog as a container where everything has been put that needs to be implemented throughout the project duration. So let us suppose this is a product backlog where we have, a user story, epic, bug that is raised in every sprint that will flow from here to here. Okay, so it is a master container where every single thing that needs to be done to close the project close I mean to get the project implemented is present here. So once we have all the things that is present here, which is implemented, then only a project is said to be implemented. On obviously the definition of ready and definition will also come into picture. So once we have the product backlog that has been created by the product owner in this case, we will prioritize that. So if you see, we have prioritized the bug one, user story one, user story two as the most critical element that will go in the next sprint. Okay, and we enter you the sprint planning phase. So again, these things are sprint planning, retrospective, DSM, then sprint retrospective. These are agile ceremonies, and you should understand what happens in what ceremony. Okay, first of all, we will get into sprint planning, where a sprint team will estimate the story and commit the story that can be completed and delivered in the sprint. We will give some instructions to every user story in the product backlog, and subsequently that story will be fetched to the sprint backlog. So in a sprint backlog, that story will be fetched, and user story will be assigned, and task will be assigned to the sprint team for that particular sprint. When the sprint backlog is ready, first of all, we will see if we have any sprint spillover that was from the last sprint, and we can take that. If we have that liberty and that freedom, we will take that. Or else we will start working on designing the requirement. Then we will build that. Then they will test that, and this cycle will repeat. Meanwhile, we will have backlog grooming and health check, as I mentioned. If we have some dependency on some team, and we are sure that that story uh, can't be implemented this cycle, we will put it in product backlog, and that is called a spillover. So that event is called health check. Again, health check and all these things, right? This depends on the company to company. They might call it health check, they might call it some other term. Sorry, can you go on mute? Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I muted that person. You can go ahead. I think.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Just to give me 1 minute. This is for everyone. If you are not, you don't need to unmute yourself. If you have any query, just ask in chat. We will give some time to discuss your query. At that time, you can unmute yourself and you can participate in that discussion. Please be muted. Otherwise, I will be forced to remove from this meeting. I don't want to disturb entire meeting session. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Again, as we talked, we will have a sprint demo that is, somehow here. So we will have, a sprint review at the end of every sprint, a sprint retrospective, what went, what didn't go well, daily scrum meeting with all these participants. We will create a burn up chart. So all these things that we discuss will happen in a way that is portrayed in the picture, just for your understanding. At the end of every sprint, we will have a deployable product. So again, deployable and releasable product is a concept. See, a release in corporate parlance means that product is available for end customer for use. Okay, available to end customer for use. Okay, so it doesn't mean that after every sprint we are going to release that to end customer, because all the components might be dependent on other components to work, right? Let's say the goal of the sprint was to create a connector. okay, or write some API. Okay, so for that sprint, we will write that API and we will deploy that API through. We'll check that we will do the some kind of quality assurance on that API, and we will keep that for further use. Doesn't mean that the finished product or finished API that is in a workable condition needs to be shipped to the customer. So customer might not be able to use after the sprint. Only thing is it is deployed to some environment. The environment that Ravi was mentioning a while ago might be we will keep to a pre-prod org or some org, and we'll keep as safe. Only thing is like that deployable API or deployable product, customer can see and give their feedback. That is the whole sole objective of a sprint. Okay. So again, I'm iterating. The deployable product doesn't mean that it is ready to use by the end customer. Okay, it might be a dependent product on some other products that might be getting deployed in the next sprint. And once we have a releasable product, then we will release this. I mean, once we have a fixed set of 4 or 5 sprint, when we have a product stack that can release to customer for use, that we will release. As for example, in the furniture example, what I talked, let's say we are creating a call center where we have multiple features. We have to you know uh, create a chat, we have to create a telephony, we have to create an email to case, we have to create auto response feature and all those things. Okay, so let's consider chat. So once every aspects of chat has been created, then we will release the chat to end customer. Okay, till every feature that needs to be implemented for chat is not implemented, we will keep it in our org, and that will be known as a deployable product. So I hope we are, uh, we are have some sense of sprint cycle and all, and how agile works. One of the things that I wanted to highlight or you would understand is a Scrum board. Earlier, what used to happen in older days, maybe 2009, 2008. Okay, there used to be, why this is called Scrum board, because there used to be a whiteboard, actual whiteboard. Okay, where once this story comes to the sprint backlog. Okay, once the story comes to the sprint backlog. Okay, so what they will do, they will create a section where they will paste all the stories, okay, in the sprint backlog, okay, and they will create a subsequent section for the sprint to track the progress. So there might be, in progress state, there might be, in review state, and there might be done state. Obviously, the definition of done, non-definition of, DOR will come into place, but that's how, an organization can track the progress of a sprint. Nowadays, we have a tool, a project implementation tool like Jira, where this can be done on a dashboard. But in earlier organization, as you can see, there used to be sticky notes where they will mention an exhaustive list of sprint, and they will mention name who will work on that user story, and they will keep moving. I mean, the person will report in that daily Scrum meeting that this story is in progress. The Scrum Master will go and they will change this from the sprint backlog to in progress. Now again, the person will report that this is done or this is in a review. Will change this in review. Then again, the person will report this is done. They will change this to done. Okay, so that's how they would be tracking their Scrum implementation in older days. Now we have a tools who which does all these things. Okay. Yeah, so that was pretty much that I wanted to discuss. We have an exciting slide, coming afterwards. Uh, Maybe shall we stop the recording and can we discuss there, because I want to discuss about microvalent.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just give me 1 minute.
Okay, okay. So I will try to finish that up in another 10 minutes or so, and we will take up questions afterwards.